We move now to the third V, Valour, courage, a vital link in the 4V model of leadership. Why? Because it extends at both ends, backward into vision and values. If your vision is clear, if your values are sound, but if you do not have the courage at the moment that it is required to stand up for that vision and values, you lose out all that has gone before. And it is also the conversion of your vision and values into victory through valor, which forms this as the vital link in the chain. Valor can be of different types. We all exhibit valor in different ways. There is physical valor, there is moral valor, and then at the highest level, there is spiritual valor. I would love to start with a beautiful example of a lady, a simple average lady, who no one would have expected to display the type of valor that you'll see in this example. And she's been made the subject of an award-winning movie. It's the story of a British lady called Gladys Aylward. In the 1930s, a simple woman from a poor family who was working as a governess to a group of children, collected money for her steamer fare to move to China because she was passionate about communicating her religion. She went to China as a missionary, spending her own money, without knowing the language, without knowing anyone over there. She reached a British woman who was already conducting an inn, a sort of a little hotel in a rural area of China. And she joined up with that lady. She'd been given a reference. She helped that lady, she assisted that lady. They served food to the travelers along the way. They helped them, they gave them rooms to stay. And then in the evenings, after the meals were done, they told them wonderful stories from the Bible and ensured that they did their job, which they had to do. Over a period of time, the elderly lady passed away and Gladys was now managing the inn. She was well known in the area, but her mission had not been very successful. One fine day, as usual, she was doing her normal work. Suddenly, a messenger from the local prison came running and he said, "The governor of the prison has called you to the prison urgently. A riot has broken out in the courtyard of the prison and there is one prisoner who's gone berserk. He's taken a chopper and he's chopping off everybody else's head." So she was scared and she said, "What can I do? Why are you calling me? What am I supposed to be doing there?" And then the messenger said, "The governor told me to tell you, your message has been that your God lives within you and that nothing can ever harm you." And then Gladys realized that if she did not go at this moment, her entire mission, which she had worked so hard for, would be a failure, as she would not have walked the talk, which is such an important component of valor. Scared, petrified, terrified, she went along with the messenger, and at the entrance of the prison courtyard, she saw the governor and some soldiers who were all waiting outside, too scared to go in. She prayed and she went in, and then she saw that one massive prisoner with a chopper in both hands was rushing after prisoners and knocking off their heads. Many were lying dead on the ground, blood splattered all over. Suddenly, one prisoner ran, took shelter behind her, and that man with the chopper came up to her. And Gladys, trembling, told him in a strong voice, "Give me that chopper at once. Put it down and give it to me." She knew that nothing would happen, but she had to do what she came to do. And surprisingly, astonishingly, that man looked at her for a minute and then meekly placed the chopper on the ground. She now gained some more strength and she started shouting at these prisoners, "Look at you, quarreling like schoolboys. Aren't you ashamed of yourselves? Now, if you promise to behave in future and clear up the mess you made, I will personally call the governor and tell him to forgive you for this instance." The governor and the soldiers by now had realized that things had calmed down, so they came in. And then the situation was restored to normal. One of the prisoners came up to her and said, "Thank you, Ai Wei Day." She did not realize what the Chinese term meant. She had not learned so much Chinese by then. She went back and in the evening, she asked one of the Chinese helpers at her inn, "What does Ai Weiwei mean?" And the other lady told her, "It means the virtuous one." And in all her remaining years in China, this is how Gladys was known. Her story has been told in the award-winning Hollywood movie, The Inn of Sixth Happiness, in which Ingrid Bergman plays the lead role. It's worth watching. So you've seen a combination of physical, moral, as well as spiritual valor coming into a lady who is just a normal, average woman without any special abilities to boast of. Courage lies within all of us. It depends whether we are willing to give it priority at the moment that we need it to. There are many leaders, famous leaders, who have exhibited similar courage in different forms. One of the other elements of courage or valor is taking responsibility when things go wrong. And this is extremely important in corporate houses. And this is how leaders' reputations are built. For example, Harry Truman, once a president of the US, had a wooden board carved and placed on his desk, which mentioned, "The buck stops here." And that is where the phrase has come from. The buck stops here. At the top, even if you have not been responsible for what goes wrong, you cannot shirk away that responsibility. It remains with you. If you try to push it down, if you try to push it away from you, yes, you may be able to do so, but your reputation as a leader suffers. One of the greatest prime ministers that we had, Lal Bahadur Shastri, displayed this in great amounts. Before he became the prime minister, he was the railway and transport minister. And there was a terrible train accident which happened in a South Indian state. Over 100 people lost their lives. Shastri ji immediately gave his resignation in writing to the prime minister, who refused to accept it. A few months later, there was another railway accident in another South Indian state in which 150 people were killed. This time, Shastri ji wrote his resignation and said it would be in the interests of all concerned if it were accepted. And this time it was. He was not the engine driver, he was not the guard, he was not the in charge at the platform, but he was the railway minister, and he said, "The buck stops with me." That was not the end of his career. After the next election, when his party won, he again became transport and railway minister, and then home minister, and finally the prime minister of the land. One of the finest prime ministers we've had. So, exhibiting valor may result in short-term sacrifice and cost, but in the end, the leader always benefits. MS Dhoni is another one who throughout his career, even though he has played the lion's share of the innings and has scored the highest, if his team loses, he still says, "I should have done a better job." Even though he scored more than half the runs that his side has made, this has been a statement all the while. "I take responsibility. I should have performed better. I could have saved the match for us." This requires moral courage. There are other ways of demonstrating courage, such as physical courage. Another American president, a two-term president, Theodore Roosevelt, once arrived for a speech at an election venue. And when he started his speech, he told the audience, "Please be quiet and listen to what I have to say. You may not realize it, but I have just been shot." And he removed his blazer and blood was pouring out from his chest. The thing that had saved him was the 60-page sheet of paper which was his speech, which he had put in his inside blazer pocket. The bullet had passed through it and entered his chest, but he refused to go for medical attention till he finished his speech, which was over an hour long, and only then did he visit the hospital. This is physical courage. Then you have another element of corporate courage, displayed so well by David Ogilvy, an advertising giant. He had his offices in various countries, and he always used to send across a message to his country heads, a non-verbal message, and it was in the form of a toy which is called as a Russian doll. It's a wooden doll, and you open it up, twisting it in two. There's a smaller version of the doll inside. Again, you twist it up and you open it, and there's a smaller doll inside. And in the last doll, he always used to keep a written message for his country heads. That if we keep hiring people who are less competent than us to save our own chairs, we will soon be a company of pygmies. But if we continue to hire people who are the best that we can get, who may even overshadow us in future, we will remain a company of giants. This also requires valor. And to conclude valor, a brilliant combination of MS Dhoni and possibly the greatest batsman who has ever lived, Don Bradman. It's about needing to let go at the right time. This also requires tremendous courage. Leaving when you are at the top, nobody likes to do it. But if you have intellectually understood the situation, that would be the best possibly thing that you could do. Dhoni retired from test matches as early as 2014. He did this. After that, he gave up his one days. Later on, he gave up his 2020s. A structured decision so that the team would not suffer the loss of a captain immediately, but his guidance would always remain, and other people down the line could have a chance to be groomed at captainship. Compare this with Donald Bradman. Now, this example is just an example, but it's based on fact. It's not that Donald Bradman knew what could happen. He could not predict the future, but just see what happened. He was entering his last test innings. He had already scored 29 centuries. Out of them, 10 were double and 2 were triple, a phenomenal test average. His average when he walked in for his last innings was already above 100. All he needed to do in that last innings was score 4 runs, and he would have retired with an average of 100, the highest average ever. He was out for a duck. Obviously, he couldn't have predicted it, but it strikingly brings home the example that if we need to let go, we need to let go at the right time. So courage is something which can be exhibited in different ways, but definitely it forms a strong link between vision and values on one hand and victory, however you may define it, on the other. So do you have the ability to pull out the necessary reserves of courage in different formats when it is required? As a leader, this is something that can build or break your reputation. I'm sure you will use it in a way in which it will build it.